Again, the mayor sends his apologies. He can't be here tonight. He's not feeling well. So we're going to go ahead and start the meeting. It's Tuesday, January 19th. It's 5:30 p.m. Supplemental notice of meeting by video conference in accordance with the order of the Office of the Governor issued March 16, 2020, is extended by the Office of the Governor on June 12, 2020. The City Council for the City of Duncanville will conduct a City Council regular meeting by video conference at 5:30 today. And that's in order to advance the public health goal of limiting face-to-face meetings, also called social distancing, in an effort to slow the spread of the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. This is an open meeting conducted by video conference. There will be no public access to a physical location. To speak during citizen comments, you must register with the city secretary before 4 p.m. on Tuesday, January 19th, 2021. Email the city secretary at duncanville.com and the title public comment January 19th. You'll need to register with the link below to attend the meeting. During the citizens comment period of the agenda, the city secretary will call your name and allow access to your camera and microphone for you to provide your comments. Please feel free to comment to the city secretary for the mayor to read and the record for the unexpected technical issues that may arise. A recording of the video meeting will be made available to the public in accordance with the Open Meetings Act upon request. And we will call this meeting to order officially at 5:32. The audience is in listen-only mode. However, citizens who register to speak can, by the 4 p.m. deadline, be allowed to speak. Their microphones will be turned on by the city secretary. Each council member must use your raise your hand option in Zoom or physically raise your hand. Votes will be a roll call vote by the secretary as she calls each person's name. State if you're for or against the item being voted on. And to start our work session briefing, also the citizen comments will be heard during the regular session. So item number 1, discuss agenda items. We'll turn it over to City Manager Paul Frederickson. Paul, you're muted.
Sorry. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council, on your consent agenda, your items for consideration include minutes for the November 3rd, November 5th, November 6th special meeting, November 9th joint meeting with the Planning and Zoning Commission, November 17th City Council meeting, regular City Council meeting, November 20th, 21st, 24th City Council special meeting, December 1st City Council regular meeting, December 7th City Council special meeting, December 14th joint meeting with the DECD board, and December 15th regular City Council meeting. Item B is consider resolution ordering the joint election to be held with the City of Duncanville. This is for the election to be scheduled for Saturday, May 1st for the purpose of electing a council member at large for 2-year term, council member from District 1 for a 2-year term, council member from District 3 for a 2-year term, and then council member from District 5 for a 2-year term, and ordering an election to be called. Item number C is a consideration of a resolution to approve a special sewer permit for 1411 South Cockrell Hill. As stated in the staff report, this property was originally built as a residential property. Since that time, it has been rezoned to a commercial district. However, the feasibility and cost of bringing sewer to that property was prohibitive. So we're offering to allow for a special use permit to provide for sanitary sewer on site. An on-site sewage facility, basically known as a septic system for this particular property. Item D is authorization. Sorry. Okay. Item D is the authorization purchase agreement with Tyler Technologies for the maintenance for our ERP system, a contract up to the amount of $92,000. I may point out that actually is a savings because when we've been able to consolidate our software programs into the overall ERP system, so we've been able to to basically cancel a lot of other agreements that we would otherwise have consolidating into the Tyler ERP system. Item E is consideration of a resolution to award a bid to Nova Paintings for the Daniel Dale Pump Station Rehabilitation Phase 1 construction project in an amount not to exceed $1,146,800. This is for the rehabilitation of our 2 tanks, ground storage tanks located on Daniel Dale Road. The north tank, which is a 2 million gallon tank, and then the Daniel Dale South is a 2.5 million gallon ground storage tank for rehabilitation for those two tanks. Item F is a resolution endorsing the implementation of a pretreatment program as required by 40 Congressional Federal Regulation 403 for the Trinity River Authority 10 Mile Creek Regional Wastewater System. As presented in your staff report, this has been an ongoing rewrite of the quality standards for Texas Pollutant Discharge System. And so what this does is make the TRA and subsequently the city of Duncanville compliant with new federal regulations for those discharges into the 10 Mile Creek system. And then finally, a resolution approving the terms for professional services engineering agreement for the design of Swan Ridge reconstruction of the road, and also in Beaver Creek and Shady Tree Place water line replacement. So what this is including is the reconstruction of the road on Swan Ridge due to deterioration for that road system. But it also includes the replacement of a water, sewer, and drainage facilities under that road on Swan Ridge Drive from Cedar Hill Road to Birdwell Drive. And then also making improvements at the Beaver Creek Drive, Shady Tree Place to Green Tree and Lane, and then Shady Tree Place in its entirety. Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, this is your consent agreement. Councilmember Jameson, you have your hand up.
Yeah.
Joanna, you muted yourself.
Okay, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't quite understand why we have to have a special sewer permit.
Because the reason being, Councilmember Jameson, because our ordinances would require them to tap into our sanitary sewer system. And in the report that shows the cost of having to do that. So there would be required normally to have to tap into our system. This would be basically a permit that can only be granted by the city council for them to be able to use an on-site sanitary storage or sanitary sewage facility. Council would have to approve that.
A septic system.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and that's because we passed the ordinance saying that you had to hook up to a sewer line if it was available.
Well, it's a sewer line because they're a commercial use. So they went from residential to a commercial use. This house was originally built in 1955 as a residence. Since then, the city changed that zoning designation to commercial. And so because of that, they would be required to tap into our sanitary sewer system. But because of the prohibitive cost to that, they applied for a special sewer permit to be able to continue to use septic for that facility or for that structure. So only council would be able to grant that.
And if it had stayed a residential, then they would not have to
If it stayed
apply
residential,
for.
they would just continue to use their septic system because they don't currently have sanitary sewer.
Okay, got it.
Where is it located again, Paul? Before I pull up my note.
1411 South Cockrell Hill.
Okay, all right, thanks.
You're welcome. Okay.
So that concludes it for you, Paul.
Yes.
So we'll go ahead and move into our briefings and presentation. Item A is to discuss the purchasing initiative underutilized business equity presentation. And I believe Sheila Baker is here to present.
Yes, she is. And this is Richard Summerlin. Just wanted to introduce this real quick. Sheila's worked diligently and done a lot of work getting this ready. And as you will see during the presentation, a lot of this we've already put into place. And as a matter of fact, both Sheila and Jennifer Odie have been working very hard this very day. They've held some purchasing training that is overall purchasing procedures, but it has included the different procedures that she's going to talk about today. So they're very busy training the city staff on how to do this. So with no further ado, I'll turn it over to Sheila.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you and other guests. I'm Sheila Baker, the Purchasing Manager here with the City of Duncanville, here to talk to you and present to you the Purchasing Initiative Underutilized Business Equality Plan that we're working on and putting in place. Next slide, please. Back last March, the Tri-Cities got together, which would be consisted of DeSoto, Lancaster, Cedar Hill, and Duncanville. We worked together looking at ways to increase our participation with minority vendors. And so in March, we started our process. And diversity vendors include the minority women-owned business, which we recognize them as MWBEs, the small business enterprises, which are known as SBEs, and the historically underutilized businesses are noted as hubs through the state of Texas. In our process, we looked at our that we currently have and ways to build that process and coverage and more opportunities to the minority vendors. Next slide. In April, we met with one of our certifying agencies, which is the NCTRCA, which you know, our purchasing, I am on the board there as well. But we met and talked with her on how they did, how they market about getting the vendors to be, become certified, how do they attract the vendors? And so we interviewed them. We looked at their registration process and the different things, tools that they use in order to get the vendors to come. And then one of my main questions was, as you get the vendors, how do we get our bidding information to you all so that they can have, access to what we have available and the opportunities? So with that, they purchased a B2G system where they actually load our bid information into their system, which goes out to the vendors that are certified and registered with them. And we were all given different assignments, and my particular assignment was to research the 252 and return to the group with the way and the regulations and guides for using the 252 to log and gather information and advertising within the state of Texas rule for the hub vendors that are listed there. Next slide, please. As we know, the state law requires that we contact at least 2 minority vendors or hub vendors on anytime we're spending over $3,000 and above, even though the law says $50,000, but we take that anything above $3,001. We make sure that we include the hub vendors in that process. Also, it regulates that we do a rotation basin, but we actually don't do that here in the city of Duncanville. We want to make sure we get the most coverage. So what we do is we pull that list at each bid. We pull a list and see the vendors that are on it, and we actually send the bids out to every vendor listed on that list, so we don't have to try to rotate. Because when you do the rotating basis, you really have to keep in log who did you send it to last and who it goes to next. So if you just utilize everyone on that list, and that helps you, and then you gain more coverage as well. And then again, if we don't have anybody that qualifies up under that list, we actually have to notate that there were no vendors available for that particular commodity. Next slide, please. When we went back in May, we went back to discuss, as you'll see, we would discuss the certification. Like, what would it mean to a vendor to be certified? Why would they go out and spend the additional monies to be certified in order to do business with the city, where doing business with the city is free? So what they would gain from that, number one, for the city itself, we would gain additional revenue, and they would gain revenue, I'm sorry. The vendor would gain revenue, but the city would gain additional vendors to do business with. And they also would have other opportunities where when we do a bid and they qualify, we do share those bids as well with other cities. And then they have special privileges within the organization as well by being certified. So in June, we met with the city of Dallas to look at their inclusion plan and how they had drafted and the things they were looking at. Being a larger city, we use those as a guide for our smaller, best of the Southwest cities. So we took their plan, looked at it and seen how it would be beneficial in our city. And so we started devising our own plans for our particular city to include the vendors, the diversity vendors within our program. Next slide, please.
This is Richard. I'm not sure if somehow we lost Sheila there or she dropped off. I did want to mention that this item was requested to be placed on the agenda by Councilman Mark Cooks. And so I'll continue on with this, step in for Sheila until we can get her back online. So the policy that was established was to be able to seek to reduce race and gender-based barriers and to foster participation by MWBE, HUB, and SBE businesses. And so, of course, that includes making every effort to include them in all city contracts, all city bids as much as is feasible. Next slide, please. So some of the goals in diversity vendor participation is to increase the participation of diversity vendors by providing equal opportunity on city construction, goods, services, and professional service contracts. And then, of course, maintaining a listing of those professional services and distributing those lists among city departments. As I mentioned, we performed some training today, and that was one of the things that we talked about to help people understand where they can find that list and how to use the list. And then, of course, to increase the number of those participating in qualifying city contracts and purchases. And then Sheila has been very involved in already in conducting outreach functions to communicate the contracting and procurement opportunities with those HUB, SBE, and MWBE participants. Next slide, please.
Hello, I'd like to ask a question. Would you please explain the difference in, if you go back to the previous slide, the difference between consideration of non-competitive and competitive, informal, and I think I know a formal bid, but non-competitive and competitive?
Sheila, are you back?
Yes, sir, I'm back.
I'll let you take that question.
Okay. Okay, a non-competitive bid and formal competitive bid. A non-competitive bid is going to be the quotes, where they actually send them out to, they choose at least 6 vendors or more to send them out to, because they are required to contact the a hub vendor. So that would be our non-competitive, because you're actually almost choosing the vendors that you want to participate. Competitive is when we actually advertise through public purchase, where it's open to everyone.
Okay, so it's the way you accumulate the list.
Yes, ma'am. It is a process that we choose to use, whether it's going to be $3,000 to $24,999. We're using the quote process, and then anything above $24,999, we're using the competitive process on our public purchase. We're opening it up to everyone based on how they're registered.
But their bids still have to be, we still take the lowest bid, right?
We take the responsive bidder, meaning that they have the lowest price, so we're looking at them, but we want to make sure that they can meet the criteria, make sure that they can provide the product or service. So that determines, sometimes it may not be always the lowest bidder, but it is the one that is the most responsible and responsive.
So like they carry the correct amount of insurance and all the things we require.
Yes, ma'am. Make sure they meet scope, they meet specification for sure, and then they can acquire the additional things that are required for them to participate with being a vendor with the city. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I think where my system went off at, I was talking about the our goals that we intend to gain from this process. Like I said, we definitely want to increase the number of those participating and qualifying for our contracts and purchases. And then again, as Richard mentioned, I have started, have always attended different ways to bring about new vendors and minority vendors to the city as well. Next slide. In this process, to have more transparency on it, we want to conduct different types of reports so that we can show the minority vendors who have been awarded, the amount and the amounts that they've been awarded for the contracts as well. Also, we just want to make sure also with this that we are definitely going by the 252, which is a state requirement, but we're also following the policies and procedures here in our Duncanville in our purchasing manual as well. And to start that off with our construction contracts, where we know we have a lot of subcontractors, which those would be considered to be our diversity vendors. We have restructured the bid itself so that we will encourage the general contractors, which would be the prime, to list their subcontract within their bid. And that way, that's going to build up stronger relationship with our primes along with our subcontractors, because they get to work for them. They identify them up front. That way we know who they are. And then we can see the participation that everybody's fostering, trying to build a stronger community. Next slide, please. Again, some incentives for them to become certified, because it is a fee and they do have to qualify, and it is a process and that they have to go through. So to encourage them to want to go through that process so that they can become the certified vendor, because they do have to show documentation to us to be considered to be the vendor, classified in that area. So, but the incentive would be for them, they're going to gain more exposure here with the city of Duncanville. They're definitely going to have more opportunities to do business with us, which is going to increase their revenue. The membership organizations is offering them different privileges there. They get additional training. They help them through their finances and just other things in the area of business that they may need some support. They do support them in that. And then also, by them becoming certified and doing business with the best of the best Southwest, that means that they're more marketable here in the area. Not only will they have exposure, but since we do interlocal agreements, they might be exposed to some of the other cities throughout Tarrant and Dallas County. So it would be a great asset to them to become certified, because we would help them really basically advertise or get their business out there where people may not know about them. Next slide. And I just wanted to share, we've some of our recent contracts that we've awarded within the last 6 months or so to show that Duncanville has always been participating and really driving to do business with the minority vendors. I just wanted to kind of bring these up. We've done more, but these have been some within the last 6 to 8 months. And I wanted to start off with the first 3 vendors. These were all purchases, just single purchases for the city itself. And this money was actually came from the CARES funding that the city had to spend to make sure that we were safe and offering a safe environment for our employees as well as the citizens coming in. So the first vendor was Safe Pass, who was an African-American male. He provided the thermal temperature solution, the big units down at the field house that the participants can go through and have their temperature taken. So when they're out there competing, since a lot of them are not wearing masks, we are doing the the first line of defense by having their temperatures taken before they are competing. The next vendor was RIT Solutions. They really offered us to be like our first smart initiative in putting in a system throughout the city itself and all of our city locations for our employees as well as the citizens coming in. We have a body temperature solution there that also comes with a camera, which also can serve as a security to keep us safe, know who's in our buildings, and the main thing to know that we're safe, that our temperatures are at a nice level and not elevated as well as citizens coming in. So they were able to provide that. Digital Resources, which is a woman-owned business, they provided several technologies here for us, like for the Zoom that we're on now, the platforms that we use, a lot of our devices that we're using, the kiosk bulletin board out front. They're coming in the city hall, they post our meetings and things of that nature. This particular company was instrumental in providing several solutions, technology solutions, so that we would be safe and be able to work in the office or away from the office. So a lot of the technology we acquired it from them. And again, that was doing business with your diversity vendors and spending not just spending the not only our budgeted money, but also the funds that we were awarded through the different CARES programs and things. Next slide.
Hey, Sheila.
Yes, sir.
Before you pass on, thank you. If I'm correct, I think if I'm correct, Safe Pass is a Duncanville resident. Is that correct?
That is correct. He is a local vendor. He is local.
Okay.
And RIT Solutions is housed in Dallas and Digital Resources is housed in Fort Worth, but you are correct.
Thank you.
He is a local vendor. Yes, sir. Thank you. Now on the construction side, I wanted to bring out the diversity vendors that we're using there, like the Anderson Asphalt. That is a minority vendor. I hadn't received their packet to list them when I made the slide, but they are a minority vendor. CCGMG, they are Hispanic-owned minority vendor for our alley construction. And we know that that particular project, these get into quite a bit of money. I didn't list out the money, but all these are 200 plus, even within the millions of dollars that these particular vendors will be receiving. FM Utilities, he's a prime, but within his bid, he went ahead and recognized the 2 subs that he's using. So that is Site Barricade and True Environment. They are the subs that he's using. So therefore that will be 2 minority or diversity vendors that will be receiving monies from that particular contract. Pavacon, he has been recognized that he's going to use Stinson Landscape and Irrigation as one of the subs on his particular contract. So we'll be able to, at the end, we'll be able to track how much money was actually spent with these subs, and we'll be able to add that to our report. After they finalize, I can request the pay documents from them to go in our reports. Next slide. And that concludes the information that I have. I'm open for any questions that you may have.
Yeah, I do have one.
Yes, sir.
Well, first I want to thank Sheila for doing this, and I guess I forgot the other person's name, but kudos to you guys for leading the way with this. I know I've been talking about this for a while, and Sheila, you came on board and picked up where the last person left off. And I actually joined one of the meetings that Sheila was on with the other best Southwest cities. And I can tell this group and Paul and the rest of our staff that great job that Sheila presented. You know, maybe I was just being partial, but I think she was one of the better presenters in presenting this to the training group. So great job, Sheila, and congratulations. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
The other question is, I want to ask, have we involved our local chamber in getting this presentation to them at all?
Not the local chamber, but I do advertise when I'm saying that, other than getting the vendors from the 252, I'm sorry if I didn't mention that. I do actually send all the bids over to the Asian Chamber of Commerce, the Hispanic contractors, the Black Association contractors. I've sent it over to Dallas Chamber of Commerce because they actually have a site where I can actually go in and load the bid up on that particular site. And so I'm able to do that. And then also in Tarrant County, I actually loaded up on the Black Chamber of Commerce there. But any other information I have?
Yeah, I was really talking about the Duncanville Chamber.
No, sir, not the Duncanville Chamber.
Yeah, would you do? Can we suggest that we get this in the hands of the Duncanville Chamber? I think they need to know this information, and I think it'll help. Because one of the questions that I was going to ask, and looking into this more, is that if we could add one piece of information, and I can't. Let me back up to say I can't tell you how I'm so tickled pink of how well and what you did in taking this to the next level. Just one thought, and that is, how can we add the word local participation as well in that? I know you're going to do it, but when I'm gone and you're gone off the scene, that word local could mean a lot as well. And I know it could be, every case is different from city to city. Could we also add the word local business as well? And I'll tell you why I say that, and I'll let you answer, is Monty and I met with our local business owners when we were going through the pandemic on a little task force. And one of their questions is what you're answering today, but they also was concerned with it being local. So I'm just asking if we could add the word local as well with this, and it won't disturb anything of what you're doing. It still have to go with the same qualification, but adding the word local.
Yes, sir, we can. In the purchasing manual that I just completed back in October, I added the local business preference. There is a form that would be needed to be advertised within the bid so that everyone is aware that we are using the local business preference. And then with that, I was also trying to do a research since I came from a larger municipality. That piece had to be adopted by the council and was in the ordinance. So I'm still, learning things from Duncanville, but if there's not an extra step that would require from the city council to go in the ordinance for me to actually advertise that document, I do have it ready. And to add it to the bids, I've also posted that information in the purchasing policies as well.
Okay. And if I recall, well, I do recall because I worked with Kevin on it, the NCTRCA, we were not, that's a membership. And thanks to Kevin Hutman before he left, he actually met with one of the leaders of the organization and signed us up as a member because we were not initially a member for it. So I know he's gone, but kudos to Kevin and Richard for being a part of the association, making us a part of the association as a membership. So I just wanted to thank, this is a great presentation. I want to thank you again, Sheila and Richard and staff for bringing this back to us. I know I'd always ask these questions back and forth, and you really have answered all of my questions today, up to and including the dollar amounts that you will be tracking as well. And I think our citizens and our business owners would really appreciate it as well, that we're trying to use local business owners as well as if we have contracts throughout our city. So Sheila, again, thank you very much. And I really appreciate it for my end.
You're welcome. Thank you. Any other questions for me?
Thank you, Sheila. Seeing none. We're going to go ahead and move to item B, discussion regarding the vacant county building. City Manager Paul Frederickson.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem and members of council, this item was requested by Councilmember at large, Councilmember Harvey, to put on the agenda for discussion. As you may recall, at one of the previous meetings, we did receive the deed and the building, the former county building, which is located on Main Street in Wheatland. We have turned the utilities over and had them switched to the city. We are maintaining that building as far as the building itself. We are monitoring it for fire, maintaining the grounds. And so I believe we wanted to have a discussion about the future of that building. I will say, not to get into too much detail, but I think this probably needs to be part and parcel discussion with our other building that we now have as well, the Eon building. So my recommendation, and I'll let Councilmember Harvey kick in if he has any other comments, but that we have that kind of in total, because I think we need to look at both of those buildings in conjunction to see what the future use for each of those buildings need to be at a future council workshop. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. Councilmember Harvey, do you have any other comments you want to add?
Basically, my purpose in asking that this be placed on the agenda is so that we could discuss it and reach a consensus as to the way forward in terms of our vision for these particular buildings. I'm particularly interested in an assessment of the condition of both of those buildings, and even so much as perhaps engaging a firm similar to the one that was used by the EDC to determine what is the highest and best use of those buildings. Personally, I'm not particularly enthralled with the possibility of owning additional buildings, but I do want to hear and engage all possibilities so that as we as a council move forward, we can move forward with our eyes wide open concerning both of those buildings. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Jameson.
Yes, I think that anybody on the council who has had the opportunity to go through the city office certainly has to be aware that they are sitting on top of each other. And so I think when we look at those buildings, one of the things that needs to be taken into consideration, and perhaps an audit by you, Paul, Richard, as to what your needs are in terms of space and offices, because I think it would be certainly remiss on our part if we decided to do something with buildings when we in fact need office space for our employees. And I think that needs to be looked into. We have, you know, the old library certainly is in the same parking lot, but across the street is not that far away. But I think we need to figure out what our own needs are for city offices at the same time that we think about other alternatives.
And if I may be remiss if anybody who does want to tour the old county facility, we can most certainly arrange that as well.
And the square footage. What's the square footage?
I don't have the total square footage with me.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
not as large as it would have.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I think it's
and
small.
And the designs, yeah, the design is a little outdated, but we can certainly take people around.
Councilmember Cooks had a question.
Well, no more a question. I totally agree with Councilman Harvey and Councilman Jameson to two parts. One, of the part of perhaps looking at a firm to give us some other thoughts on what we could do with the building. And then combining that with what Councilman Jameson just mentioned about even with additional office space. So I don't think we just reach out and tell them to tell us what we need, but we tell them as well how we think it needs to be used and see how well that matches up as well. And then we have something to work with. Because if I had a thought, I know that Councilman Anderson and myself walked through the building a while back, and it would be a great thought for office suites in conjunction with having some staff offices over there as well. So I think there's a lot of great forward thinking we can do with a project with at least one of the buildings. I don't know if both could be used that way, but I think that's kind of where Councilman Harvey, I think we're going to, and he was asking about another company, but I wouldn't want to just hand over to with another company without giving them what we think already and letting them kind of go forward. So that was my comment. But business suites is what I really like. A joint business suite venture, meaning that we have space and small business owners have space as well. And that's in one of those buildings at the same time. So that was my comment.
Thank you, Councilman Cooks. Councilman Anderson, and you're on mute. There you go.
I think Councilman Harvey's right about focusing on this because, you know, those are, to me, those two properties are two important properties in a prime location in town, probably the highest internal city traffic count that we have in the city. And they both could be added on to. They're large pieces of land. They're in a plan that what we might do with Wheatland Road one day in Main Street, you know, how you would incorporate Wheatland, maybe Main Street and those two properties together, and how you would start to evolve that corner into more of a downtown district. I mean, those buildings could, I think, be used, repurposed, and added on to make them better. You've already got parking there that the city has that could be utilized at night. You've already got the park. You know, you connect up Main and Center, you know, Main and Wheatland, Main and Daniel, Main and Camp Wisdom. You know, you have the hubs, just like we talked about in the in the Main Street plan from the very beginning. And I think it's just a really important asset to be taken lightly. And I'd hate to see it be used personally for city offices when it could be used maybe for something a lot higher, you know, income producing for the city, you know, back on the tax roll. So my point is it should be looked at a lot more careful than just, you know, a few minutes here at a briefing.
Thank you, Monty. Councilmember Jameson, you're on mute. There you go.
Yeah, I would just say that back when the old Brahms on Camp Wisdom was up for sale, and I tried to encourage the city to buy it for $60,000, and now we're spending millions because we've outgrown the fire station and need the fire station. So I would say caution, caution, caution that I think we know we've outgrown the city offices, and the employees need somewhere. We need to build a place, either build and increase. We need to hear from the like city manager and your needs are, but so that I don't want to turn around and not have it available for the city offices. The other thing is, after EON, I'm hearing from citizens that they do not want their taxes, and they're not interested in us going into businesses with other businesses. It's not what their tax dollars are for. Their tax dollars are to take care of the city, not to go into business with other businesses. That's not what we are. We're a city. And I mean, if you're talking about a stadium or something that everybody can use, that's one thing. But EON was a disaster. And we don't want to do that again. We need to learn from things that we've done. So that's what I am hearing now from citizens is, what in the world? Don't do that again. So
Well, I think my other comment here, it still goes back to, depending on where we go with this, if we decide to go and let someone else give us some thoughts, then I can share some more ideas and thoughts with you on business suites. As we still own the building ourselves. So I'll wait and see where we go for as getting additional information.
So my question, it seems like we have a consensus really with colleagues that we need to examine what we need to do. Mr. Frederickson, do you feel like that you have a plan or understanding of what we need or would like?
I do. Assessment of both buildings. We could do a physical assessment of both buildings. It would be necessary. And real quick, the tax office is about 3,800 square feet. The Eon building is about 8,300 square feet. We can do an assessment of both, the physical assessments of both buildings, engage a firm to look at highest and best use, and then just examine the staff needs, and then of course business suites and those and other ideas. We do have the Hewitt-Zollers report that was a facility study for the entire facility. It looked at the needs for the entire facility, all facilities, including City Hall, police, both fire stations, senior center, rec center. So we do have some idea of staff needs as far as square footage is concerned. But we'll come back in the future on an item to kind of have these discussions, and then proposals on if we want to engage someone to look at the highest and best use for both of these buildings in one. I think this will probably be a much larger work session for council, and probably needs to focus honestly on these two buildings and nothing else, if you would be okay with that. Because it is a very important discussion now that we have these two buildings. We have two basically hard corners at Wheatland and Maine that are city owned. So we'll certainly have that discussion. But this is good input. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Moving along, item number C, discussion regarding parking on Royal Boulevard. Chief Brown will be presenting this item.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council. Councilmember Jameson requested that staff research parking in the 600 block of Oriole Boulevard and bring this item back before council for discussion. And so we've done that, and we prepared a PowerPoint presentation, and I'll move through that PowerPoint presentation, and we'll answer any questions that council may have. Next slide, please. So Duncanville City Ordinance 19-111 is the authority to prohibit parking on narrow streets. And so if you look at the second bullet point, due to part of the Oriole Boulevard being adjacent to the Deer Chase condominiums being greater than 30 feet in width, our city engineer cannot prohibit parking at this particular location. Any parking changes there has to be approved by the council. And so Public Works Director Greg Ramey, would you like to come in on that at this time?
Yes, thanks, Chief. So again, as it says here on the ordinance, council has given me the authority within the city ordinance to regulate parking in streets less than 30 feet, which is primarily the residential streets in Duncanville. And as briefed previously, we've done a few locations in town, excuse me, where we have taken one side of the street and declared it no parking zone based on requests from the fire department in order for them to get their emergency vehicles. And so in those cases, I'm able to operate with the authorities that you as council has already given me. However, when it comes to Oriole, it is a residential collector and it is greater than 30 feet. And so this is something that council is reserved for them to regulate.
Next slide, please. So we have here an aerial picture of the Deer Chase condominiums, as well as the parking in a 600 block of Oriole Boulevard. And if you look at the very north of the condominiums, you'll see the cars parked there. That is parking for the Deer Chase condominiums. But along the west side of the street where you see the trees, there is some parking there by residents of the Deer Chase condominiums. Please. We also felt it important to go back and look at the number of traffic accidents that have occurred over the past 12 months. And so from January 2020 to December 13th of 2020, we've had not very many accidents at all. We've had one accident in the 100 block of Oriole Boulevard, one accident in the 400 block, one accident in the 600 block, and then you had 8 accidents from the 700 to the 800 block of Oriole Boulevard. And looking at the two bottom photographs, the first photograph is looking south from the Deer Chase condominiums, and the second is looking north on the opposite side of the roadway. Please. Next slide, please. And so what we also wanted to do, Mayor Pro Tem and Council, we wanted to go back and have our traffic officers look at the speeding in this area of Oriole Boulevard. And we did this count from November the 29th to December the 7th. And as you can see, there are quite a bit of vehicles traveling this roadway. There was 3,758 vehicles during the time of the survey. And if you look at the bottom of this photograph here, what we've done is a survey of the vehicles traveling greater than 32 miles per hour. And of the vehicles that traveled the roadway during this time period, 44% of those vehicles traveled greater than 32 miles per hour. If you look at the bottom right, you will see that 3% of the vehicles traveling on the roadway traveled greater than 40 miles per hour. Next slide, please. Again, what we wanted to do was provide some photographs of the area. Myself, Public Works Director Greg Ramey, and one of the traffic officers actually met with one of the residents of the Deer Chase condominiums in December of 2020, just to hear any specific concerns that the resident had. And as you look at the first photograph at the top of this particular slide, one of the recommendations that we had was to trim back those trees. And if you look at the bottom photograph, we also made another recommendation of trimming back the hedges. Yes, ma'am.
On the bottom photograph, I don't know what time of day you took these photos, but it's just like a lot of things in our city, and that is that it is when we have problems is either before people leave for work or after they get home. This is showing nobody. But if you look at the car in the right-hand photo and you bring those cars all the way back, because they are parked. I drove over there to see what in the world they're talking about, and it was more than one person calling me. They come out of the driveway, they look to the right and they look to the left. There are cars parked all the way back. Now, all these photos are showing no cars. But if any of you are interested, go there in the evening. I couldn't believe it. There are cars parked all the way back, and they literally take up this entire lane, the right-hand lane, when you're headed south. And that's what they're talking about, is coming out of these condominiums, which is where this photo is showing. And when they're leaving for work, or I guess whatever time of day it is, and they said there are people that have parking places that are marked as theirs, but they don't use them. And they park here on the street. I don't know why, but anyway, they come out of the driveway and you look to the right or you look to the left and you can't see. It's not just the shrubbery, it's that there are cars parked all the way back and it takes up a whole lane. And then you look at it as far as the aesthetics of our city, coming off of Camp Wisdom, going down Oriole. It looks like the biggest mess with cars parked all along here. There are businesses that are, you know, you can pull in and go buy a convenience store and go in the parking lot of the 99-cent store right there. That's where the cars are parked all the way down to there, to Camp Wisdom. And then they stop up there a little way, but none of these photos are showing all the cars that are parked there. The photo should have been taken. And I want to tell you, I thank you for talking to them, and they all think you're a wonderful person and like you. But this is not showing really their problem. Their problem is there are cars that are parked all the way down and they take up that entire lane. And it's a mess. And they're saying they can't see. They can't see when they come out. And I'm saying, as someone who doesn't live there, it looks terrible for our city to have all these cars parked all over the street right here, right by, they can't even go to the businesses because they're not going to the businesses. They're going into the condominiums, I guess. And there are businesses that are right there, right before the condominiums, that it is making it difficult for them also. And the speeding is just like another issue that's thrown in there when you take it down to one lane and then you're speeding on top of it. It's a mess. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And so next slide, please. And so Mayor Pro Tem and Council, what we've included in this slide was just some options that Council has. As I mentioned, we did make some recommendations to the Deer Chase condominiums, but also the Council has the authority to prohibit parking, and that's what we included in the very last bullet point. If you'll see, prohibit parking on either side of Oriole Boulevard from East Camp Wisdom to Falling Leaves Drive. And Public Works Director has the ability to move forward in the event Council direct us to do so. And so at this point, we're seeking direction from the Council as to what you would like for us to do to address these concerns. Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions or comments for Chief Brown?
I don't have any questions or comments with Chief Brown, but it kind of goes back to planning and zoning. When we talked about this earlier, this is an example of why you kept hearing me over and over talk about areas of our cities and where we needed some help, and we don't want it to look like certain parts of when we looked at it before. So the only part I would just add, we have more than one spot like this in our city, but we do have to come up with some type of solution. But I hope next time, even as we talk about planning and zoning, perhaps we include Chief Brown in those type of discussions in the future, because we really need to make sure that going forward that we're not creating an area that we are shooting our own self in the foot when we go through this. I don't have any solutions other than what you guys have listed up there, but I just wanted to add that planning and zoning plug that we needed to be cautious of.
Councilmember Jamison?
My suggestion is to relieve those people so they can come out of their condominiums. It's just to have some signs because as you go further down, if you're familiar with Oriole, they do have signs where you cannot park on that side of the street. It's further down into the neighborhood. But because this is right at the mouth coming off of Camp Wisdom, going on Oriole, I think we need to put up signs and tell them either no parking period or no parking between certain times or whatever, because I have to say I was very surprised in talking to them. And it is more than one person who's called me. They are, as I understand it, they have 2 different homeowners associations. One was in phase 1 and the other one's in phase 2. And it's just like everything else where it's hard to get everybody together. And, you know, because I did suggest that if they wanted to come to us like that. But I mean, I got their message loud and clear. And I drove over there and looked at it. And I was very surprised at the mess that parking. And I don't know why people started parking there, because I would be concerned that my car would be hit. But they are literally taking up an entire lane. And one of the spokespeople for their group is a professional driver. He is a truck driver. And he said, and he drives all over the place, all the states. And he said, you can't do this. You can't take a whole lane for all your parking up and down the street. And, you know, I guess they can because they're doing it. But I think that we need to address it and put some signs up to stop the parking on those streets, so that the people, as they leave the condominium, they can see to get out. They're afraid. The problem is you come out and you can't see that a car coming, because they're speeding also, and somebody's going to get hit. But it also, for us as council people, it looks trashy. It looks bad having all these cars parked right there on the street and taking up a whole lane. It's exactly what we've talked about in code, as Councilmember Cook said. That's not the way we want our city to look.
So, Councilmember, you want us to come back? We'll have to make a change to the ordinance to add the prohibit, to be able to prohibit the parking on this particular stretch with signage. Was the preference to prohibit it outright, or were you suggesting that we have prohibited parking during certain hours of the day? Because I think that may be a little bit more harder to enforce, honestly, I think. So
Okay.
if we're doing it, the other thing is too, you know, we haven't really had any kind of public input in this area. You know, we've heard from 1 or 2 people that live at near Chase, not to suggest that not
Yeah,
everybody
I've
would
heard from
agree
more
with
than
this.
that.
Pardon?
I've heard from more than that. What we normally
Understood.
do.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah, I
suggesting
don't
you
tell them
haven't,
to
but
call you. I just tell them I'll talk to you and put it on the agenda and we'll talk about it. So they, you know, I think we should take care of problems. You know, I don't think it's necessary that we have everybody come up and fuss, you know, that they're unhappy with the way it is. That we just take care of it. There is no reason why people are parking on the street right there, except I guess.
well, our understanding that the people that are parking on the street actually use the live in the condominium. So what will happen is, I think if we prohibit the
I
parking, we
know.
will hear.
They're not using the parking place.
Right. Okay. Well, staff will put together a proposal for a change of the ordinance and bring that back to council on a prohibition of parking along that corridor.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Councilmember or Mr. Hager?
Yeah, to bring back the ordinance, you just want the west side?
That's what I was going to ask. Just the west side of Oriole at this point.
Yeah, that's where the problem is. Yeah.
Okay.
Councilmember had a question.
Just for the, I don't want to get into argument here, but you know, I'd be totally against that. I go through there all the time, and it's very safe place to drive. You know, I go through there every day. I think that more than just a piece, I think where you start to get into trouble is you start doing pieces and parts of things, you know, you don't have accidents there, as Chief Brown said. You don't, I mean, very few. I mean, so I think I would just say, you know, you need to look at the bigger picture of the neighborhood. On-street parking slows down the traffic. You keep it widen streets, faster traffic. That's
Traffic.
Did I?
Yeah,
I
let
didn't-
Monty.
I'm talking, I didn't interrupt anybody else, but I'm just,
I'm not interrupting you. I
giving
thought
my-
we're having a discussion. In the briefing room, we
I was-
have discussions.
Time for Mr. Anderson to continue his comments.
so I would be against doing that without it having some public input from the businesses and the people around there, and
That's fine.
looking at the bigger picture of, what problems might be over there, what kind of future streetscape we might want to do with sidewalks and different things. Maybe there's something you want to put in the next bond election to kind of fix things, to create bubbles, those bubbled out curb areas, or maybe there's other things that you might want to do in the future. But I think doing pieces and parts like this is what does make a city look really bad. So this is my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mark, did you have another comment?
I did. I just want to ask Councilman Anderson, I do like your thought. So you're saying don't do it that way, but you're saying the solution would be have a public forum, or do you have another thought on how it could be resolved?
Well, I think that you could, I think that first step, they've looked at it. I think you get, Ramey's very capable of looking at proper planning, urban, transportation planning, and that's what this is. And, the visitors come to the Deer Chase condominiums, they park out front. And I think, I'm in favor of on-street parking, that way we don't have to build, more parking lots. I'd like to see, you'd like to see more things happen with that shopping center right there next to it. There's nothing ever been in that shopping center. There's reasons that places deteriorate and rot, like this area. I think you look at the economic development, you have to look at the development patterns, the transportation, the public walking spaces. You have to look at them all at the same time. I don't think you just go start putting signs up on the street and, eliminating things. I think you need to look at the whole picture. What's going to be safe, and what's going to provide us quality of life, what can provide us economic development, all three at the same time, instead of just looking at one thing.
Okay. So with that being said, are you saying perhaps would an alternate be parking in the at the shopping center? And I'm not just looking for that area. I'm thinking before, it's not just one isolated area. It's a citywide thing for different areas we need to look at. So with that parking, you just mentioned that little mall. Would the mall be a spot people could park and walk back to their home to get off the street? I'm just asking, Monty. Is that?
Sorry, I
didn't hear you.
I couldn't hear you. What did you?
Oh, I was just asking. You mentioned that there was a shopping center that's close by that had parking. I was just wondering would that be a solution?
No.
For them to park?
Yeah, I wasn't saying that. There's plenty. I think the Deer Chase condos has plenty of parking, inside their own property most of the time, from what I see. I'm just saying that the shopping center and development around there commercial development is not very good and not very stable for a reason. And so sometimes if you do one thing that's bad and then you do another thing that's bad and another thing that's bad, trying to fix things instead of looking at it all at the same time. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying look at it intelligently across the board, not just as transportation, but look at it, in all the ways together. Because you don't plan a city just by looking at the roads. We used to plan cities with the buildings and the sidewalks and the roads all at the same time. And there's maybe some things that we can try to start to do with those shopping centers on Camp Wisdom Road, which bleed into this neighborhood. And I like this street. I drive this street every day. Every day I drive this street. It's one of my favorite streets in town. It's an easy street, and I never see any problems. And I don't know why we would just look at one thing and not look at like the whole piece. That's all.
Thank you, Councilmember Anderson. Councilmember Jameson, did you have another comment?
Yes. One thing is, this is a residential neighborhood. This is past the commercial. This is residential. This is not for development. And the shopping strip he's talking about, that's too far for them to park and walk over. Number one. Number two, they probably wouldn't let them do that. Use their parking lot for their condominiums to park in. But also, as you go further down Oriole, they do have a part of the street that you cannot park on. And so it already is sort of, you can park here, but you can't park here, but you can park here. It's a long road and it curves. So it's already done that way. This isn't the first time it would be done that way, but this is in residential. This is not commercial development. And it is past the businesses. It is right past the businesses. And I don't think, because I do talk to those businesses over there, and let's say they've got a lot of issues, but I don't think that they would go for residents parking there and walking home. And I don't think residents would do it. The reason why they're parking on the street probably is because it's easy. And they're not using their designated parking place in the parking lot for Deer Chase. Now, why? I don't know why they don't use them. You know, I don't know, but they don't. And I think Councilmember Cooks during one of our meetings was talking about how, you know, we'd have to make people do things. I don't know how you make them use their parking place, but they're not. And they're parking on the street, and it is a danger. And it also is unsightly. So it already has, as you go down the street, an area that you cannot park in, an area that you can. And this is all residential.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other comments or questions? Mark, if you're making a comment, you're muted, sir.
Let me correct that. I wasn't saying make someone do anything. I was saying suggested when we talked about including others. I was saying suggest that they come to a meeting as a whole. I wasn't saying make them do anything. So I want to correct that.
Thank you.
So that I understand, Mayor Pro Tem and Council, that what we really are wanting to focus is on that west side of Oriole and really improve the line of sight issues for ingress and egress to Deer Chase, correct? And if that's the case, staff can come back with a solution. I think that resolves that one area that we don't wholesale prohibit parking throughout, but enough for people to be able to get in and out of Deer Chase. Is that a fair summation?
I'm not saying, yeah.
Okay. We'll work.
I don't see anybody objecting to it, Paul, so I'd say move forward with that.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you want people to come up here and talk, then I'll tell them. The council doesn't want to make a decision until you come and fuss. So I just told them that I would put it on the agenda and we would take care of it.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, the photographs are not showing the problem. If you saw the cars that are parked there after everybody is at home, I think you would be shocked. You would be stunned.
Let us work out a solution, I think, based on the input that y'all provided, which is the ingress egress into Deer Chase and providing line of sight so that they can exit safely or enter safely and work on that. It could be on the next, we'll put it on a future agenda. Certainly we can notice people, let people know that that is coming up. So if they do want to speak about that particular item, that we can have that as far as the input.
Thank you. Moving along, item number D, discussion on trash receptacles at main intersections in Duncanville. Interim Manager Paul Frederickson.
Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, this item was requested by Councilmember Jamison to discuss placing trash receptacles at key intersections, mainly along I-20. The cost of a receptacle is roughly $500. So the cost issue is maybe not as much of a concern as it may be the upkeep. I got Bart Stevenson that is also on the Zoom. Maybe can lend some more to it. Councilmember Jamison, did you want to, I'm sorry. Okay.
Oh, yeah, I just actually was driving down the streets in Grand Prairie and they have trash receptacles and is very clean, very professional. And I know those of us that are close to I-20, and I said for main intersections, because I don't know if we can get people to use them, but it's better than having the trash thrown on the street, and it is being thrown down. And particularly as they come off of I-20, they throw trash. Cockrell Hill, Cedar Ridge, and I think in the city also, just to keep it clean. Now the ones that Grand Prairie has are just regular trash bins, and it says keep Grand Prairie beautiful. And I thought that's what we should be doing, is encouraging people to throw their trash in a receptacle. And when we don't provide them, you can't really get upset that they're not doing it. But I'm sure some of you, you've been behind people, they'll roll down their window and throw out trash. And you think, what are you doing? You know? So we talked, Paul and I, about maybe having a trial run with some intersections, and that's fine with me, to see if we can get people to use the trash can and keep our city clean.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, we talked. Yeah, we did talk briefly. I said I think we need to give this a trial period to see if how they're utilized, and then how we would be able to. Because I think, unfortunately, even and Councilmember Jameson's point, there's just litter, and people just don't respect the environment. They don't respect just any place where they think it's necessary to throw out litter. The issue becomes that they don't make it, it still exacerbates the problem sometimes. But I think if we were to place them in particular areas and just see if that works, our crews do try their best throughout the city. Our litter control crews specifically are out and doing their best to keep the city clean. And I think it's one of the things that that I do appreciate, that they are out, and that when you look at our medians and so forth and our intersections, that they're really quite clean. But there are problem areas, to Councilmember Jameson's point, and others, I'm sure, throughout. But I would recommend, if we do this, maybe a trial period in some areas to see how it works and what we can learn from those. Because it's not just simply putting up the trash cans and hoping that people will use them. It's the type of trash can, and that they will in fact use them, especially if they're queued up at a stoplight. They would have to be able to use it in that form. So I don't want to add anything else to that discussion. Okay. Bart, did you have anything you wanted to add as far as our experience with the litter control group?
Only that we do have 2 dedicated litter control members to our streets. I think they do a great job. We're certainly not opposed to making this a trial or a pilot program to see if something that our citizens would utilize. And the concerns really are that it's limited to one space per intersection. They can really utilize it at a time, and that if they do miss, that they're not going to get out and clean it up. So. But then, as you've already mentioned, it is a litter issue that we've dealt with for years and years, and perhaps something like this would be something we could try and see if it works out for the community.
Okay.
Thank you. Any more comments or questions? All right, seeing none, we're going to move on to item E, discussion on vote center reduction. City Secretary Kristen Downs will present this item.
Yes, this was requested by Mayor Pro Tem McBurnett and Councilmember Jameson. Next slide, please. So for our November 3rd presidential joint election, the total cost was $998.79. That included 29 45 early voting locations and 466 election day vote centers. Due to COVID, the elections administrator provided a cut in cost for election equipment. They have stated that they needed 2 years to collect data to determine voting patterns and voting needs throughout all of Dallas County on reductions. Our December 8th general runoff election was a total cost of $11,381.69. That had 6 entities that participated, 12 early voting locations, and 92 election day vote centers. Next slide, please. This is a list of all of our voting centers that we've used throughout the city of Duncanville. We have 11 of them. Next slide, please. I reached out to Dallas County and I asked them how we could go about reducing the number of vote centers for our May 2021 election. They did restate that they needed at least 2 years to determine the data for the city of Duncanville. I then requested information if we cut the voting centers down to possibly Bird, Reed, and the library only. To date, they still have not responded back to me. I do have an election meeting on February 4th. I'm hoping to get more information then, but I'm not positive. Also, Duncanville ISD would need to agree on the reduction of vote centers that the city proposes too. Next. Y'all have any questions, comments, concerns?
Yeah.
Ms. Jameson?
Am I muted?
No, you're,
Okay. Fair Meadows should be in there. We've always had Fair Meadows. You left that out.
Okay.
But how we pay for these election sites, we always get charged for it. So it's kind of, I don't know what happened that all of a sudden that Dallas County tells us what election sites we need. Because, I mean, I understand that they started this new policy that you could vote anywhere for whatever election. But, I mean, if you think about it, if you went to a vendor to purchase something and they told you what you had to buy and then how much it was, this is ridiculous. There were so many voting places and you have to pay for it. Now we share it. Dallas County is not the boss. They pay a portion of it also if they have a Dallas County election going on at the same time. And the school board pays a portion of it if they also have an election going on at the same time. So whatever entities have elections going on share the cost. So if you have no elections, for instance, with the school board, then we pay for it with Dallas County. If Dallas County doesn't have any, then we pay all of it. And I don't know, I just really, it never was this way until this year. And there were so many sites, it was ridiculous. And some of them didn't have any votes. And then to tell us they need to do a study, well, wait a minute. Before this, we had our voting sites. If we wanted to have, they would provide them, but we had to pay for it. I know they did at Champions Cove. We had to pay for it. But this is weird that they're telling us they need to study it to see how many we need. They're the one that changed the policy to say that you could vote anywhere you went. And, you know, that's fine with me, but it was way too many voting places. 92? It's just overkill. And when we have to pay for it, and we have no control over whether there'll be a school board one or not, or a Dallas County one or not. So it's just odd.
Mr. Hager, did you?
Yeah, for Ms. Jameson's benefit, the reason that the study has to be done is to preclude there being any allegations that there's voter suppression going on. So there has to be a reason why they alter the available voting sites. And so they'll have to do that study in order to have a basis upon which to make that decision. So unfortunately, that's why that has to be done. Or the cost involved in the time. Thank you.
And Mr. Harvey has a comment.
I agree with the concept of preventing voter suppression. However, I would feel more comfortable if we at the local level had the option of determining what voting sites were appropriate for us. Because the resources that we get from the taxpayers are scarce. And we are always challenged to how to use those resources to get the most for the taxpayers. So if I have a choice between paying less for elections or paying more, I'd rather choose less. And to piggyback on what Councilmember Jameson said, in Duncanville, we have a tradition of knowing where those polling places are. And so to have more polling places, I think generates more confusion than voters at the end of the day. So I would like for us to have more input as to where we can have our voting locations.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey, and respectfully, I agree with Councilmember Jamerson and Councilmember Harvey with the same issue. There is additional costs, and frankly, I mean, I've seen where the library pretty much can handle it on its own when it's held at that one location and stuff. But I'm not opposed to it being expanded. I want to thank Kristen as well for reaching out to Dallas County with the options and responses as well. Councilmember Cooks.
Yeah, just one last comment to that, as I believe we have a contract with Dallas County, and if that's the case, then we're able to Bob, you help me with this. If we have the contract with Dallas County, can we not determine what the contract should sounds like or be like? Or we're saying we want that contract to be in, saying 4 locations. So can we not control that since we're actually in a contract with them?
You're correct. We do have a contract with them, but I think some of what's driving this is the early voting and able to be voting everywhere. So they're picking spots not only for our residents in Duncanville, but for our daytime population as well. But there is a new election official who has just been hired by Dallas County. Ms. Pickenpool has retired, and so you might see some changes, and this is a good opportunity for Kristen to go to them while we have a new election official for Dallas County to broach this subject so that it's not only available and no voter suppression, but it's done so at a cost conscious way, because we do have to pay that freight. So.
Well, I'm just saying to us, instead of approaching it, we know we want the end result to be, but I'm just saying approach it or using it from Christian standpoint to say we'd like to reduce our contract to this many voting centers. Use it from that approach versus saying the why. Just use, we want, based upon the contract we want you to write us, we want you to write us this many voting centers. All right, thank you.
I will state that in February 4th for Bird, Reed, Fair Meadows, and the library. And I will let y'all know.
Thank you. Moving forward, we're getting ready to enter executive session. City Council shall convene into closed executive session to seek legal advice from the city attorney pursuant to section 551.071 Texas Government Code regarding the following litigation matters and or potential claims. 1, City of Duncanville versus Tommy Winn properties filed in Dallas County Court at law of Dallas County. Number 2, involving an employee EEOC claim. And item 3, involving law enforcement, Duncanville Police Department and Dallas County Sheriff's Office. City Council will leave Zoom video conference to go into executive sessions via go-to meetings. City Council will return via Zoom once executive session is completed. Council members, please make sure you leave the current regular meeting and click on the executive session link that was provided by the city secretary. The briefing session is recessed at 7 p.m. We're still awaiting a few council members. And in the meantime, I will say that Mayor Gordon is not feeling well tonight. Therefore, as Mayor Pro Tem, I'm run the meeting today. We wish the mayor well, and we'll hope to see him soon. Let's see, we have Councilman Cooks, Councilman Harvey, Councilman Anderson, Councilmember Veracruz, and I do not see Councilmember Jameson yet. Since we do have a quorum, I'm going to go ahead and continue the meeting. We're going to call this meeting to order at 7:32. Invocation, Mr. Harvey, do you mind giving the invocation this evening? And you are muted.
Okay. Am I good? Okay. Will you join with me in prayer? Dear God, our Heavenly Father, we love you, we magnify you, and we praise your holy and righteous name. We are so thankful to have this opportunity to serve the great people of this community. And what we'd like to do right now is to ask you in the name of Jesus that you would grant us the mind of Christ and give us the wisdom and the knowledge and the insight to make the kind of decisions that would glorify you and benefit this community. We pray, dear God, for the prosperity of this community. We pray that you would just throw your loving arms around us and protect us from the pandemic that is raging throughout this nation. We pray, dear God, that we might, as community leaders, be examples in our homes, on our jobs, and especially in this community in which we live, so that people can look up to us with pride and know that we are doing the right things for them in your name. And this we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. And now for our pledges. Stand for our pledges. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, one and indivisible. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Okay, thank you. Now, the first item on the agenda is reports. Again, the mayor's not here, so there's not going to be a mayor's report. Are there any council member reports? Mr. Cooks.
Yes. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Council member report. I want to first, as in Councilmember Harvey's prayer, just kind of remind our citizens to stay safe and covered up and stay prayed up for sure as we go through this pandemic. We pray that this will end at some point, but we know the Lord will have us covered. I know that I've had a couple of calls in reference to where the citizens of Duncanville will go and receive, hopefully, the vaccine. We don't have a special place in Duncanville, but we are in combination with the Dallas County. So for those that are think 1A and 1B, I believe is how you describe it. The Fair Park is still available when they have shots, and as well as we hope, as our other elected officials are working to get one closer to us. As soon as we get more information, please note that that will be on the City of Duncanville website. So we'll ask you to kind of keep your eyes on that, because the information we have will be posted there for sure. So I want to thank the doctors and those first responders and everyone who is taking that vaccine. And as soon as it's available to us, please note that I'll be in line taking it as well and be able to report that back out to you as well. Secondly, I want to acknowledge the Jack and Jill Incorporation of America, who has 8th and 9th graders. This coming Saturday, I'll be in conjunction with some other elected officials as a panelist, working with them on economic development, with questions on how what made us decide to get into elected official position. So Jack and Jill is a suburb of organization in the southwest part of Dallas. So I'm looking forward to joining their Zoom call on Saturday. Of course, as all of us know, I want to again send condolences out to Chief Brown, as well as Paul's wife, father as well. I'll let you know that you were in our prayers and you continue to be in our prayers. Meet, Connect, and Learn. Did a little different this time. I invited Coach Samples to be with me on this coming Saturday. I'll invite you all if you'd like to join with the Meet, Connect, and Learn with Coach Samples. He will talk about the team. He was talk about how he get his players all prepared and how we too can use that same winning program of football philosophy to have a winning program in our city. So I'll encourage you to join me at 10 a.m. on Saturday. And perhaps if you have questions for him yourself, I will share with him. I want to know, Coach, what do you tell the team in that huddle when it's 4th and 1? I just want to know when you call timeout. What do you tell them? So some very fun questions. I'll ask you to join and ask the coach some real good questions and commend him for running an excellent program over the next 3 to 5 years here. As I passed by today, I noticed that they're breaking ground for Navy Federal Credit Union up by Costco. And so that's exciting. So every time you pass by, for those that don't know what's going on there, that will be the new Navy Federal Credit Union. So it's exciting for that. Make sure. And then the last thing is, I got a call from a citizen who said, "Hey, the staff are putting down the bike lanes, and so that is down in some areas, and they have a little bit more to go." I want to thank Paul and definitely thank Bart for their leadership in making sure that the bike lanes are now being striped. So as soon as that's done, and as soon as the next sunny day, just note, please share the lane, because I'll be out there on a bike sharing lanes in Duncanville with our bike lanes. So exciting time. So that's all I have. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Councilmember Cooks. Mr. Veracruz.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mike Burnett. Just want to give a shout out to our Duncanville School Board trustees who had a very successful 3rd annual coat drive. And I was able to participate in that. And it's an awesome event. So we look forward to supporting them next year, helping them out. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Veracruz. Councilmember Jameson.
Let's see. Am I muted?
We can hear you.
Okay. I just wanted to say that the Women in Municipal Government, I've been participating in a inauguration and Martin Luther King celebration, and the focus has been to restore and enjoy the American people and follow some of the practices that Martin Luther King had suggested. and they hold very clear and true today, as much as it did in the 60s. Through National League of Cities, if anybody's interested in going on and Zooming. So I just think that we're in a place we need to love one another and try to remember peace is the way, and that we should try to stay united and stay focused on building our relationships.
Thank you, Councilmember Jameson. Any other reports? And I'd just like to conclude very quickly. A couple of things that Councilmember Cooks mentioned, the back trail markings. I've noticed that going down as well, and wanted to give kudos towards that direction. Also, I wanted to give a shout out to our Duncanville football team. Even though it fell a little bit short, they had an outstanding season and during a hard and different time. So congratulations to them. And lastly, I want to talk about John Thompson. He passed this past Friday. He's been involved in this community for a number of years, and he was Chamber Man of the Year. He was a college professor. He was a bank president in this community, helped build this community during his times here, and also did Duncanville Weekly News for 28 years, bringing the good news to Duncanville. So life well lived, John Thompson, and prayers for his family. And that concludes my report and stuff. Mr. City Manager, do you have a report?
I have nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. Item number 2 is proclamations and presentations. We have item A, which is a video presentation of the swearing in of Councilmember District 2, Don McBurnett. And the Constitution. I, Don McBurnett, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of Councilmember District 2 of the City of Duncanville, and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and the laws of the United States and of the state, so help me God. Thank you. I'll work on the acting job better and stuff. But anyway, thank you for that. Item B is an introduction of Joanna Fritz for Public Services, and Robin Moda will join us to introduce.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council, Interim City Manager. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Great. Okay, thank you so much for allowing me to participate this evening. As you know, my name is Robin Moda with Republic Services, and we are your preferred solid waste and recycling partner in the city of Duncanville, where we provide industrial, commercial, and residential services to nearly about 11,400 customers each week. As some of you have heard, Republic Services has had a realignment in the municipal field with the manager coverage, and my territory has been adjusted. Therefore, I will no longer be supporting the city of Duncanville. It has been a true pleasure working with you over the last 4 years or 4+ years. And I hope that during that time, I've been able to be a source of support to the city's needs. I would like to introduce my counterpart, our municipal manager, Joanna Fritz, to you tonight as your new contact. She will be your point of contact moving forward. She has been with us and a counterpart of mine and part of our Dallas business unit and that management team supporting our Ellis County partners. And we are excited to have such a great asset on our team. And I'm excited to have a great asset to transition to this account. Joanna and I will be working together. We're going to continue working together as we provide a smooth transition for you and the city. I'm confident that she will bring good value to you and the community. At this time, I'm going to have her, there she is, share a little bit about herself.
Well, it's my pleasure to see you all tonight, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. I'm looking forward to getting to know all of you better over the coming months and years. I love Duncanville. I'm up there often. I contribute to the sales tax base on a frequent basis. And so I enjoy all that you have to offer. I've enjoyed some of your parks and other things, and I look forward to getting to know the city even better. Just a little bit about myself, in addition to my experience with Republic Services, I, in another life, spent some time as a PR and marketing professional. I have been a Chamber of Commerce professional and an exec, and understand the importance of chambers in a community, and I look forward to getting involved in the chamber there in Duncanville. I have worked for organizations large and small, including EDS, back when it was EDS, that's going to tell you my age, and Texas A&M University. And when I worked at Texas A&M University, I worked on a program for the Ag Extension Service with their Master Volunteer program called EnviroSmart. And who knew all those years later, it would be a valuable thing for me to know so much about recycling. So I've enjoyed working with cities over the years. I've been campaign managers and political advisor, and enjoy working with cities and helping them achieve their goals. So I look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Robin, thank you for your past service as well. Joanna, we look forward to having you moving forward as well.
I have big shoes to fill.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, is this a voting item or not? Joanne, nothing against you at all. This is really about Robin. So when she's gonna vote or not, we'll see.
Y'all are very kind.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number C, proclamation recognizing Martin Luther King Jr. Day, January 18th, 2021. And Councilmember Cooks will do this presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and to our citizens of Duncanville. Just before I read this, I sit here and reflect for just a moment before reading this and thinking about in 1968, me sitting around in the living room with my mom and 3 sisters and dad, and what occurred at that time, not really knowing what was happening, but knew we had a real nice picture of Dr. King in our home. Not knowing why my mom or dad was really sad at that point. So as I reflect back thinking of that, it's with privilege that I read this proclamation today, as well as thinking about the moving forward proclamation that the city secretary had put together was a little bit different this year than normal. So I'm glad to read this. So the proclamation, whereas the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was born on January the 15th, 1929, believed in a nation of freedom and justice and dedicated his life to the advancement of civil rights for all through nonviolent means, and challenged all citizens to help build a more perfect union and live up to the perfect purpose and potential of American through public service. And whereas in 1994, Congress initiated the King Day of Service, a nationwide effort to transform the federal holiday honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. into a day of a community service, grounded in Dr. King's teaching that helps bring people together and thereby breaking down barriers that has divided us as a nation through contribution their own time, talents, and the day of service. And whereas hundreds of thousands of volunteers in the cities and towns across the nation participated in King Day of Service projects in 50 states and used Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a day on, not a day off, by spending it performing community service each year. And whereas this is new, nonprofit organizations such as Keep Duncanville Beautiful, volunteer managers, American Corps, and Seniors Corps members across the nation have organized hundreds of projects for volunteers to engage in service under the goals of King Day of Service. And whereas the King Day of Service, which falls on January the 15th this year, is an excellent opportunity to take steps and making a service a regular activity in the lives of Duncanville residents, and as fitting memorial to the life of Martin Luther King Jr. And whereas federal and state legislators have recognized Dr. King's legacy as one of America's outstanding civil rights leaders by creating a federal holiday marking his birthday. And whereas this federal holiday was signed into law in 1983 and first observed in 1986, and is observed a year since on the third Monday in January. Now, therefore, Barry L. Gordon, Mayor of Duncanville, Texas, do hereby proclaim January 18th, 2021 as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Cooks. Nice job and stuff. Next, item D is a proclamation recognizing the month of January as Firefighter Cancer Awareness Month. Councilmember Joe Veracruz will read the proclamation.
Thank you, sir. So, Office of the Mayor, proclamation. Whereas cancer is the most dangerous, under-recognized threat to the health and safety of our nation's firefighters, and whereas firefighter occupational cancer is a leading cause of line-of-duty deaths in the fire service, and whereas in 2019, more than 75% of the names added to the IAFF, which is the International Association of Firefighters, Fallen Firefighter Memorial Wall of Honor in Colorado Springs, Colorado, were of members who died from occupational cancer. And whereas the Firefighter Cancer Network, Support Network, and the IAFF have designated the month of January as Firefighter Cancer Awareness Month. And now, therefore, Barry L. Gordon, the mayor of City of Duncanville, Texas, joins the IAFF and the FCSN in designating the month of January as Firefighter Cancer Awareness Month to bring increased public awareness to firefighter occupational cancer, the effects it has on the fire service, and to bring targeted education about best practices and resources to reduce the impact of cancer within the fire service. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Veracruz. And just a shout out for the memory of Dan Merrill with that as well, Duncanville firefighter and stuff. All right, moving to item number 3, citizens input. Pursuant to section 551.007 of the Texas Government Code, any member of the public has the opportunity concerning any matter or any posted agenda item. However, the act prohibits the city council from deliberating any issues not on the public agenda and such non-agenda issues may be referred to the city staff for research or further action. All persons addressing are subject to the council adopted rules and limitations permitted by law. To speak during citizen comments, you must register with the city secretary before 4 p.m. on Tuesday, January 19th, 2021, or email the city secretary at duncanville.com and the title email public comment January 19th. You will need to register with the link below and attend the meeting. During the citizens comment period of the agenda, the city secretary will call your name and allow access to your camera and your microphone for you to provide your comments. Please feel free to email your comment to the city secretary for the mayor to read into the record for any unexpected technological issues that may arise. The city secretary will set a 2-minute limit on the comments as they are read. We do have citizen comments today. The first one we have is Roger Sashington. Is Mr. Sashington with us?
Yes, he is, and we will be moving him over shortly. Mr. Sashington, are you there?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
All right, you can start.
Hello, Mr. Sashington. I'm sorry to interrupt you. We're glad you're here with us. If you could give us your name and your address, please.
Sure. My name is Roger Sashington, and my address is 8740 Cedar Thicket Drive. I'm on the Dallas side, just on the other side of Clark Road.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem, distinguished members of the council, thank you for what you do. Thank you for your efforts and your work, for the city. I come tonight to really just to make a statement and to ask a question. The statement is, as all of you, I'm sure, are aware, the speeding and the reckless driving between Camp Wisdom and Wheatland Road on Clark Road is out of hand and out of control. It presents a clear and present danger to pedestrians, to cyclists, and obviously to other motorists because of the speed. I have been, for the last 5 years, in an effort to get the city of Dallas to move to do something about the speeding. As of right now, there is design work that's taking place to install a traffic light between Camp Wisdom and Wheatland Road on Clark because of the low visibility at the intersection of Summit Park, which goes across Clark and enters the Duncanville side at West Ridge. There have been many accidents at that intersection, and we're fortunate and blessed that no pedestrians have been killed. Not so fortunate at the Camp Wisdom intersection, but my request to the council is to diligently and quickly work out the negotiations and conversations that are taking place with the city of Dallas and the city manager's office there to bring to a quick resolution and conclusion whatever needs to be taken care of between the two municipalities, so that this safety concern can be taken care of for all of the residents that travel along that stretch of roadway.
2 minutes.
I thank you so much for what you do, and appreciate you all, and I hope you have a great night.
Thank you, Mr. Sashington. The next one that we have is Jeremy Kuntz. Is Jeremy Kuntz available?
He is, and we will be moving him over. Mr. Kuntz, are you there? Mr. Kuntz?
Can you hear me?
Yes, please state your name and address for us.
My name is Jeremy Kuntz. I live at 226 Creekwood Court.
You may begin, sir.
All right, in 1989, the PTA in Duncanville proposed plans to build Safety Town in Armstrong Park. These plans eventually grew into what became known as Safety Town and Kidsville, a building project that was planned, significantly funded, and built by the Duncanville community. It's been publicly acknowledged that Kidsville and Safety Town have surpassed their life expectancy and no longer meet modern standards for children's play areas. And therefore, plans for their demolition and replacement are scheduled for this year in March. That being said, Kidsville still represents the community spirit of Duncanville, is a structure that's completely unique to our community and is part of our community's history. There appears to be some plan to save some part of Kidsville from the demolition, but that plan does not appear to be specific in any way at this time. And so the following proposals were made at the last Parks Board meeting to preserve parts of Kidsville. Number one, taking just a few pieces and fortifying them and or replacing the wood and integrating them with more durable materials to make a miniature replica of Kidsville inside the new playground. Two, selling the Kidsville pieces as a fundraiser or simply offering pieces for local residents to have and use. And then thirdly, using parts of the structure, for example, the towers, the train station, the depot, at the new park entrances, or integrate some of the pieces into the Armstrong Park landscaping. The schoolhouse is not very large. And so seeing as how local school children contributed to the construction in many ways, and Kidsville was the work of the PTA in Duncanville, if we were to preserve, improve, or fortify one piece, that the schoolhouse might be the perfect choice. And then finally, even though the demolition is inevitable and it's rapidly approaching, please consider these and other proposals for how parts of Kidsville can be preserved for use as a monument to our children, a monument to our community spirit, and as well as for its aesthetic value. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kuntz. We have one more comment, and it is from Patricia Ebert at 115 South Greenstone Lane in Duncanville, and it's asked that I read the public comment. The public comment is as follows. The city of Duncanville seeks damages from Eon Realty, Inc. press release dated January 7th, 2021 on the city website states that the city is seeking damage from Eon that total $2,380,674 plus interest and attorney fees. Below are two quotes from a 2015 Dallas Morning News press release on Eon. 3D Virtual Tech School opens in Duncanville, Texas. It was by Julie Fancher, the Dallas Morning News, May 14th, 2015. One of our goals, our pillars, is to become a virtual reality capital of the country, City Council Member Cliff Boyd said. Grant money covered the city's costs, and the company will pay back that $1.5 million in rent in over 10 years, Assistant City Manager Charles Smith said. We haven't exposed our taxpayers to anything, and it's a great opportunity for us to grow, he said. For your easy access, below is a link to the article. Plus, I've copied you with the news PDF. It's https://www.gov.tech.com education/higher-ed/3D virtual tech with the dash in there, virtual tech schools. It opens in Duncanville Texas HTML. Again, Patricia Ebert, 115 South Greenstone Lane. And that concludes our public comments. Item number 4 is our consent agenda. The following may be acted upon in one motion. A city council member may request an item be removed from the consent agenda for individual consideration. City Secretary Kristen Downs will read the consent items.
Item 4A, consider the minutes for the November 3rd City Council regular meeting, November 5th, 6th, 7th City Council special meeting, November 9th joint meeting with Planning and Zoning Commission, November 17th City Council regular meeting, November 20th, 21st, and 24th City Council special meeting, December 1st City Council regular meeting, December 7th City Council special meeting, December 14th joint meeting with the DCEDC Board, December 15th City Council regular meeting. 4B, consider a resolution ordering an election to be held in the city of Duncanville on May 1st, 2021 for the purpose of electing a council member at large for a 2-year term, 1 council member from District 1 for a 2-year term, 1 council member from District 3 for a 2-year term, and 1 council member from District 5 for a 2-year term. 4C, consider a resolution approving a special sewer permit from 1411 South Cockrell Hill Road. 4D, consider a resolution authorizing a purchase agreement with Tyler Technologies, Inc. for annual software support and maintenance for the city ERP system using Sourcewell Cooperative Contract 090320-TTI in an amount up to $92,026.12. 4E, consider a resolution authorizing award of bid IFB 21-0010 to Nova Paintings LLC for the Daniel Dale Pump Station Rehabilitation Phase 1 construction project through the city's competitive bid process with an estimated expenditure amount not to exceed $1,146,800. 4F, consider a resolution endorsing the implementation of a continuing pre-treatment program as required by 40 CFR 403 for the Trinity River Authority's 10 Mile Creek Regional Wastewater System. 4G, consider a resolution approving the terms and conditions of Professional Engineering Services Agreement PSA-21-008 for engineering consulting services design of Swan Ridge Drive reconstruction and Beaver Creek Drive and Shady Tree Place waterline replacements with Burgess and Nyepel and the proposed amount of $102,170,000.
Thank you, City Secretary. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
Councilmember Jameson made the motion to approve. Councilmember Harvey seconded.
Councilmember Veracruz, 4 are against.
4.
Mayor Pro Tem Mac Burnett, 4 are against.
4.
Councilmember Anderson, 4 are against.
4.
Councilmember Cooks, 4 are against.
4.
Councilmember Jameson, 4 are against.
4.
At large, Councilmember Harvey, 4 are against.
4.
Thank
you. Thank you. Item 5, items for individual consideration. A, consider an ordinance revising Chapter 20, Water, Sewer, and Sewage Disposal, repealing and replacing Article 4, General Sewage Disposal Standards to provide updates to regular regulations governing wastewater discharges into publicly owned treatment works within the city of Duncanville. And with this, Assistant Public Works Director Jackie Colton will be presenting this item.
Good evening. Honorable Mayor Pro Tem Mac Burnett, distinguished members of the Duncanville City Council, City Manager, other city officials, city staff, and guests. I'm Jacqueline Colton, Assistant Director of Public Works. My goal tonight is to appraise you of the proposed amendments to the Duncanville City Code, Chapter 20, Article 4, General Sewage Disposal Standards, also known as our pre-treatment rules. Joining us here tonight is Mr. Brad Dice, Pre-Treatment Coordinator, Trinity River Authority, They've been a great partner for us. And Public Works Department staffers, Matt Bryant, Duncanville Utilities Department Superintendent, and David Dunn, Assistant Superintendent of Utilities. Next slide, please. The purpose of my presentation tonight is simply to obtain the City Council's approval of Ordinance Number 2339R, which amends the City Code Chapter 20 to revise the pre-treatment regulations. Changes are necessary to comply with the Trinity River Authority's request per the EPA and Texas Commission on Environmental Quality Requirements. Next slide, please. For a bit of history, the Trinity River Authority treats most of the wastewater generated within the city, over 3 million gallons a day. This wastewater is treated under 2 separate agreements that we have with TRA. One agreement is the 1985 10 Mile Creek Regional Wastewater System contract. And the other contract is the 1984 Central Regional Wastewater System contract. Most of the city's flow goes to the 10 Mile Creek facility. These contracts require the city to comply with all federal, state, and local laws, rules, and to administer a TRA-approved pre-treatment program. Next slide, please. Okay, wastewater discharges are highly regulated on the federal, state, and local levels. Started out with the Clean Water Act of 1972 as amended, which sets the federal law for wastewater discharges. The US EPA codified into the Code of Federal Regulations the effluent guidelines and standards and general pre-treatment rules in 40 CFR Part 403. EPA has delegated its authority to the states. The Texas Commission on Environmental Quality is the regulatory authority responsible for regulating and overseeing wastewater discharges. The TCEQ rules are found in Title 30, Part 1, Chapter 315, General Pretreatment Regulations. Okay, TRA, which is our wastewater treatment provider, is required to implement a pretreatment program which meets federal and state laws and rules. And guess what? Because TRA has that authority, they require all of their contracting parties, including Duncanville, to implement ordinances which contain pretreatment regulations for indirect discharges. And when we say pretreatment, we're referring to not the domestic wastewater dischargers, but those non-domestic, those industrial dischargers. And currently, Duncanville has 2 that are regulated by the pretreatment rules, and they are Pioneer Foods and La Mexicana. Next slide, please. Okay, in order to discharge the wastewater, the TCEQ requires the Trinity River Authority to maintain a wastewater discharge permit, or TPDES permit. So about almost 8 years ago, TRA got a new permit for its 10 Mile Creek wastewater treatment plant. And at that time, the TCEQ said that the pre-treatment rules needed to be tightened up. And as a result of that, TRA required all of its contracting parties to work with them together to tighten up the pre-treatment rules. And so, next slide, please. So finally, after 7 years and many iterations of revision or proposed revisions to the rules, and TRA working with the cities and the city attorneys to, develop a language that is appropriate and permissible to the TCEQ, we're here tonight to ask for adoption of the new pre-treatment rules. Next slide, please. Okay, the pre-treatment proposed ordinance changes run the gamut from abbreviations and definition changes. There's an abbreviation for the TCEQ because, previously it was the Texas Water Commission, and it's been known under several other different regulatory names. Adding a definition for extra-jurisdictional user to adding new consent order enforcement provisions. Next slide, please. Now let's look at some of the major proposed revisions to Chapter 20. Section 2054C, incorporation of industrial waste regulations by reference, is added to incorporate the City of Dallas's water quality standards by reference. And their standards are essentially identical to TRA standards. A very small portion of the wastewater generated within the city of Duncanville flows through Duncanville to the Dallas system. So that's why that provision is included in our ordinance. And then there's a definition added for best management practices to include schedule of activities, prohibitions of practices, management practices, etc., designed to protect the publicly operated treatment works. So that's just another tool in the city's toolbox in order to ensure compliance with state and federal and TRA requirements. Next slide, please. Additional major provisions include requiring extra-jurisdictional users to enter into an agreement with the city in order to discharge wastewater to the city's wastewater system. And then the definition of significant industrial user is proposed for revision to exclude those non-significant industrial users who discharge less than 100 gallons per day of non-domestic wastewater to the city's wastewater system, which ultimately flow to TRA's 10-mile wastewater treatment plant. This will reduce sampling and reporting requirements for such entities, as well as administrative oversight for the city. Next slide, please. Additional major provisions to the Chapter 20 pre-treatment rules will require existing industrial users to apply to the city for new wastewater permits within 90 days, is currently 60 days, of the effective date of pre-treatment ordinance revisions. So therefore, the two pre-treatment customers that we have will have 90 days to apply to the city to get new pre-treatment permits in order that those permits might be updated with the current regulations. And then new industrial users must apply for a permit at least 90 days prior to the anticipated discharge date. And industrial users seeking to transfer a wastewater discharge permit must give the city at least 60 days advance notice of its intent to transfer a wastewater permit, and that requirement is 30 days. So that gives the city more time in order to, you know, transfer the permit properly and analyze the situation. Next slide, please. Okay, other provisions include or provide for the city to enter into consent orders with non-compliant users. Now, this is not really a problem at this time. However, this gives us flexibility to have more tools in our toolbox as far as enforcement is concerned. And consent orders are judicially enforceable. Next slide, please. Okay, so future actions. Our plan is to notify the 2 impacted industrial users immediately by providing them a copy of the ordinance and discussing it with them. And so we will also make sure that the city's website is updated with the current pre-treatment ordinance provisions so that, you know, entities wanting to relocate to the city will be able to go to our website and see what the current requirements are. Next slide, please. So therefore, in order to comply with provisions of our wastewater contracts with TRA, state and federal regulatory requirements, staff recommends the Duncanville City Council approve ordinance number 2339 to revise the city code, chapter 20, water, sewage, and sewage disposal, article 4, general sewage disposal standards. This concludes my presentation. Thank you, City Council, for your time. Public Works Director Ramey and I would like to thank Brad Dice of TRA for his participation and assistance, and city staff members Matt Bryant and David Dunn for their attendance. We will be happy to answer your questions at this time.
At large, Councilmember Harvey has his hand up.
Thank you so much. Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, Ms. Colton, from a practical standpoint, do we really have a choice here?
No, sir, we do not. In
Okay.
order to comply, in order to comply with our contracts and state and federal law, we must adopt these provisions.
Okay, well, since we don't have an opportunity to argue on the merits of this case, has city management, departmental management been able to ascertain what the budgetary impacts will be of these new expectations from our upper levels of government?
Yes, sir. They should have negligible financial impact.
Okay. So is it true then that this pre-treatment program is an initiative designed to prevent primarily industrial users as a byproduct of their production processes, putting in disposing of water into our systems that could possibly cause us to be out of compliance with EPA guidelines. Is that what the pre-treatment program represents?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And ultimately to protect the waters of the state.
And so who is primarily responsible for administering the pre-treatment programs? Is it city staff, or is it TRA, or is it a third party?
It is city staff within Duncanville.
Okay, so city staff has the expertise to go out and monitor these two sites to ensure that things are being done decently and in order.
That is correct. But I would like to add that TRA does sampling and monitoring for us. It's actually a partnership. And, you know, our utilities group, David Dunn, he primarily administers our pre-treatment program.
Okay, are these enforcement activities, do the companies pay for these enforcement activities? How does that work?
Yes, sir, they do. They pay for them, for the services that they receive under the contract, the sampling and monitoring.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I got one other question.
Mr.
Oh,
Harvey,
go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Mr. Harvey.
I was just moving to approve. Go ahead.
I got one other question. So it took 8 years then for these changes to come down the pike and affect us. So given the change in administration, do we expect, or can we reasonably expect more regulations of this manner, or has there been enough time to really make an assessment of that?
This should be the final round of these particular changes. Now, we do have a representative from TRA, Mr. Dice, online with us that we could ask, but this should be the final round of, you know, the last, I hate to say straw, but this should be it. We should be complete with this set of changes.
Thank you.
In order to, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. And Mr. Cooks, I heard you make a motion to approve.
Yes, sir.
So I have, and Mr. Harvey seconded. City Secretary.
Councilmember Vera Cruz, for or against?
For.
Mayor Pro Tem Burnett, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Anderson, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Cooks, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Jameson, for or against? I think she is having technical difficulties. At-large Councilmember Harvey, for or against?
For.
Okay.
For.
Gotcha.
Very good. All right. Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you all very much.
Item B, election of Mayor Pro Tem for 2020 to 2021. Mr. Anderson.
I nominate Mark Cooks.
All right. We have a nomination of Mark Cooks. Do I have a second?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Harvey.
So This is to Councilor Hager.
Yes,
So-
yes, sir.
So the appointment of this Mayor Pro Tem, for how long will this Mayor Pro Tem serve?
What you have traditionally done is after the conclusion of the general election, and if we have a runoff, the runoff usually in late May or early June, we normally would, the council would entertain to nominate and elect a Mayor Pro Tem for the next year until the next general election. Since the general election was postponed, it's your custom to then have another election again in May or June of this year after the next general election. So that's been your custom. Since the election and we had a runoff was so late, Mr. Mac Burnett has served in that position a little longer than is normal. So that's the lay of the land. There is nothing in the charter about the length of service. It just says the council shall, from among its members, elect a mayor pro tem. And your rules of procedure were generally, it was done after the general election every year.
So therefore, if I understand you correctly, the longest serving Mayor Pro Tem in Duncanville history will possibly be succeeded by the shortest serving Mayor Pro Tem in Duncanville history. Is that a possibility?
If you follow your custom, that would be correct, sir.
All right, well, if Councilmember Cooks wants to serve 5 months.
The motion has been made by Mr. Councilmember Anderson for Mark Cooks.
Mayor Pro Tem, it does not require a second. You would just nominate and then elect from whoever's nominated.
All right. Well, City Secretary, if you, well, I guess there's open for more nominations, but City Secretary.
Well, hold up. I want to nominate somebody.
Mr. Harvey.
I want to nominate Councilmember Veracruz.
Okay. All right. Any more nominations? Okay. Mr. City Attorney, if I understand it correctly, we take it in order. Mr. Cooks is nominated first, and we would take a vote on that, then followed by Mr. Veracruz, if so.
Yes, and it would take 4 members to vote for either one of the candidates for there to be an election. Thank you.
Okay. City Secretary, if you take a vote, please.
This is for Councilmember Cooks.
Correct.
For Veracruz, 4 are against.
4.
Mayor Pro Tem Mac Burnett, 4 are against.
4.
Councilmember Anderson, 4 are against.
4.
Councilmember Cooks, 4 are against.
4.
Councilmember Jameson, 4 are against. I think she's frozen again. Councilmember at Large Harvey, 4 are against.
4.
Councilmember Jameson, 4 are against.
4.
All right. Congratulations, Mr. Cooks. And with that action, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, sir, I think you can go ahead and complete your term. We're not going to let you off that easy.
All right, sir. Then we will continue. Item number C, take any action necessary as a result of executive session. There's no action to be taken. Item number 6, staff boards and reports. And we have 3 reports, the monthly financial report, the B is the fire department quarterly report, and C is the police department's quarterly report. And does anybody have any questions for any of these? Councilmember Cooks.
I do have a question for the chief, Chief Brown, if he's still on.
Yes, sir. I'm still here.
Okay. No, Chief Brown. Is that Chief Brown?
Yes,
Hey,
sir.
Chief Brown, I know you normally send us different ones for the district, just for us. Did you include that, or would you continue to include that in our report? A breakdown of the a quarterly report for per district in the city?
Yes, sir. We still do that, and if I fail to send that to you, my apologies.
Okay, no problem. Thank you, sir. That's all I had.
Okay, are there any more questions for any of our directors? Seeing no questions, I do want to make the comment. I want to thank Mr. Summerlin and his staff, Chief Rhodey and his staff, and Chief Brown and their staff. We really do have a good city staff, and I just appreciate a lot of the hard work that they do. With that, I see the time is 8:36, and we will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, and good night.